Hello Noel, this is the testing video for your LS400 89 to 91 manual in right hand drive. So obviously it's all completely brand new built because all the old harnesses are pretty shabby now. So again, completely rebuilt, completely covered in heat shrink. Every single connector is labeled for you with covered in clear heat shrink labels, so they should last a while. Obviously this is the finished product in its covered sense, so we're just going to quickly pop over and take a look and see what it looks like underneath, and then we'll come back and join you guys, so bear with me a second. Okay, so that's what it looks like underneath all of that. So it's all nicely twisted for you, all very flexible and should last you for a long time. So going back to basics, obviously you've got your section that's coming inside the vehicle over here. So you've got your grommet over there. Coming down to here, you've got to your igniters, which are down over here. Coming up the top, and then obviously we start to form the U shape. So you've got the section that's coming down here. And then effectively, you've got injector 7 coming out there. You've got injector 5 coming out here. You've got injector 3 coming out there. Coming down to the front, you've got your breakout over here. And these are designed to be bolted onto the thing via these bolts here with P-clamps. Same with this one over here. So you've got injector 1 coming out here. Coming down here, you've got your cam coming out. So that's going to plug into your cam sensor down here. Obviously, I'm using a 1UZ-FE engine. It's just on the stand for purposes, just to obviously lay it out so you can see how everything goes. Coming down here, we then have another breakout down here, which will be at the top here. One is going off to your coil, which will be mounted here. Then you've got one coming off to your lambda sensor, so that's going to run down the side of the block to go into the exhaust over there. Okay, and then coming down here, we've got your oil pressure switch. So these are all going to go down here through this little hole over here and then split up like your lambda going to the back. Crank is going to come down and go into the front, and there's your crank over there. We've just got a little device to feed an RPM signal into it, because obviously we're going to test all the injectors and coils. So that's that side over there. And then lastly, you've got this little section that comes out here, which goes to your earth strap over there at the back of the block. Everything gets earth through there, so you must connect that, otherwise nothing is going to work. Okay, then you've got your sub harness, which is obviously labeled your sub harness. That's going down there, and that goes down to your starter solenoid and your 2 knock sensors. Again, everything is labeled for you. We've got an LED in there because we're physically going to test it via the fuse box to see that the starter is getting a 12-volt signal when we go to crank. Coming along the back down here and around to the other side, you're then going to come out to your injector 8, and then down here you've got your injector 6. Injector 6 is this one, and injector 4 is this one over here. Then you've also got your TPS coming out there, so obviously your throttle would normally be here, so there's your TPS on this side over here. Coming down to the front here, you've got your injector 2 that's going to go over there. Now you've got your coil coming off over there. Obviously on your engine the coil is going to sit here, so your coil comes forward to there. And then you've also got your temp. This is for the single wire temp sensor that lives inside the water bridge over there. And then you've got your coolant temp sensor over there, which is again sitting right over there. We've got your idle control valve, which is obviously bolted to the front of the engine over there. And then coming down along with the coil, you've got your cam sensor that sits down here as well. And then further coming out there, you've got down here to your mass airflow sensor. So obviously you've got the big aluminium style mass airflow sensor. And then also coming out here is going down, which will then go down like on this side of the engine over here. But following that down, you've got your alternator plug. Now in your case, you've got the big round alternator plug. Now those only came on the very early 89 to 91/92 models. Everything after that had the smaller, what I call the oval style plug. So we fitted that for you, and we've got this. So this will adapt that to the big round one. So if your alternator does fail, you can get an alternator from a later model, which will just open up more years available to you to get an alternator. So we've done that for you. Okay, and then breaking off of there, then we're coming up to your lambda sensor over there. Obviously we're plugging them in to make sure they're heating up and everything is part of the testing. All right, so that's basically the harness. That's how it's laid out. So hopefully it'll be nice and easy when you get into it there. So what we're going to do now is, obviously you receive these welcome packs with your harness, and this is going through each of the wires, what they do and how they are connected for you. So I'm just going to quickly go over to here, and I'm just going to talk you through the wires just in case you don't get around to reading the welcome pack. You can just refer back to this video and I'll tell you where everything is connected to. So first of all, these two white wires here are replacing these two thick red wires. These require a permanent 12 volt supply. The ECU needs a permanent 12 volt supply to store codes for diagnostics. So if you get that to ignition, you're effectively going to reset your ECU every single time. So permanent 12 volt for those. Coming on to the other ones now, we've got black with a red. So I'm going to go through the major ones first. Black with a red, that's your ignition 12 volts. So again, you can take it from a key barrel, from an ignition switch on your dash, whichever you want to do. Your black with your yellow, that's a starter signal. That requires 12 volts. Now these are thin wires because obviously they're just triggering relays. Your starter and your fuel pump relay are built into here, so you don't have to worry about, you know, current flow, etc. This is just literally a thin wire just to trigger a relay. Okay, moving on to now these sort of lights on your dash, if you will. We've got the yellow with the red tracer, and that is your check engine light. We've got it hooked up to our dash here, so it's going to come over there. This little LED in the fuse box, that's also your check engine light, just in case you don't get around to hooking that up and you want to start the engine up. You still have a check engine light to do diagnostic codes there, which we will go through as part of the test. We've got yellow, which is your RPM signal, and again we've got that hooked up to our dash so we can see the RPM signal when we obviously feed the engine harness an RPM signal. Coming down to the bottom here, we've got a yellow with a green tracer. Now that's connected to this temp sensor over here, which goes into your dash. If for whatever reason that temp sensor is not applicable with your dash, you can just remove that and fit whatever temperature sensor is going to be relevant for your dash. So just bear that in mind, you don't have to use that one. Coming on to the pink with the blue, now that's going to be your alternator light. So you can see I've got them hooked up to LEDs over here, so we're going to physically be testing those out. And down here we've got your yellow with your black, and that's your oil pressure switch. So again, that's what's hooked up to this oil pressure switch over here. And as discussed, we've given you the newer style plug. So again, you can swap over and replace it with a newer style one, which gives you an easier choice of getting it, because they still use those ones on even 3UZs and so on. So nice and easy to get hold of. All right. Coming over here to your gray wire, now that's going to be your fuel pump 12 volts. So again, this is relayed in and it's fused in here. So you can use this to power directly to your fuel pump. We've got a 16 gauge wire here. You can, if you're going to have a long distance, you can upgrade from here to a 14 gauge just to carry the current. If you want to run more fuel pumps, then obviously you can just use this as a relay to trigger a relay, and you can do one directly in the boot with the fuel pumps if you need more power for that. Okay. The fuel pump is controlled via the ECU in this case. I do have a video on the fuel pump systems and how they work. So in your case, 89 to 91/92, these ones are controlled via the ECU. You'll notice I've got my multimeter hooked up to here, to my multimeter over there, and obviously we are going to be activating the fuel pump in the two ways that it does work, just to show you, and we can obviously show you the values appearing on there. Okay, so getting through to what we're actually going to be testing now. So just to cover, that is all the wires that you need in your car effectively, so it's nice and simple for there. So to start off with, we're going to be testing the charge light and the oil pressure, so that's the pink and blue and the yellow and black. We'll be testing the check engine light by obviously turning the ignition on and doing that. We'll test the fuel pump relay. There's two tests for the fuel pump relay, because basically the fuel pump works under two conditions. One, when it receives a starter signal. So basically when I touch this black with the yellow. So what we'll do is I've got fuel pump relay and starter circuit underneath, because we're going to kind of test those two initially together. And then we'll just confirm that when the ECU receives an RPM signal from the crank sensor, that obviously the fuel pump still works, and we'll see our voltage on the multimeter there. Then we'll be looking at the tacho signal, because then we'll start feeding an RPM signal in, so we'll make sure that that's coming through the yellow wire over there to make sure that's all correct. While the engine's receiving the RPM signal, I'm going to go around, and we've got obviously our coils here hooked up, just so we can actually physically see a spark coming off of them. So we've got the coil on this side, We've got the coil on that side with the spark plug over there, so we can see that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go one by one on each injector, and we're going to plug them in, and you're going to start to hear them clicking away, so we know each and every injector is working as it should. Then we're going to look at the idle control valve, so that's all plugged in over here. So effectively what we're going to do is we're going to cut the RPM signal, and you're going to see this little sort of thing move up and down, so that imitates your idle control valve obviously opening and closing over there. Just make sure that that's working exactly as it should do. Alright, so it's down at the moment, so what we'll probably do is more than likely when I go to feed the RPM signal, I'll hold the camera up here because you'll see this will actually shoot up because the RPM will be over idle and it'll push it up to actually close the valve itself. Then we're going to go and look at how you read the trouble codes, and what we do have here on your welcome pack is obviously all the stuff like what your fuse box layout is, what each fuses do, and then I've got an entire sheet here of all the trouble codes that you could have. Okay. So, nice and simple, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the first of them, which is obviously the indicator lights. So I'm going to try my level best here. So what I'm going to do is, effectively I've got a wire in here because the alternator just literally earths it out. So all I'm going to do is earth it out on the block, and you're going to see the little LED light up. And that's connected to the pink and blue wire, so we're quite happy with that. Now I'm going to go around the other side, and I'm going to grab the oil pressure one. And again, same thing, we're just going to earth it on the block, exactly like I'm doing over here. And then effectively, there's your light coming on and off. So that'll be your lights on your dash that you can hook up there. Okay. So, that's that done now. So we're going to move on to the next one, and that's going to be the check engine light. So we're going to put the ignition on, and then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the starter signal, and obviously the fuel pump coming on as part of the starter signal. So again, nice and simple, black with a red wire. I'm just going to push it into my 12-volt source over here. Let me just get them in there so it stays. Fantastic. Now I've plugged that in, you'll see the LED on the fuse box come on, indicating that the ECU is on and everything is working as it should. We've got the check engine light coming on the dash, indicating that the yellow with the red tracer wire is correct and it is hooked up to the check engine light, so that's absolutely fine. Then what we're going to do is, oh, there's one wire I didn't go through, sorry, as part of the starter circuit. You've got this white with the blue. So this white with the blue, what it basically is, it's so you can install a clutch switch if you want. So effectively at the moment I've got it attached to ground. You can either connect it to ground via a clutch switch, and what it does is it inhibits the starter relay. So if you don't have a clutch switch, just connect the white with the blue directly to ground by the fuse box. That's absolutely no problem. If you do have a clutch switch connected via the clutch switch to ground, that would then mean the vehicle will not start unless you press the clutch in. So if you want that feature, it's there for you. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take our yellow with the black, we're going to supply it with 12 volts, and the second I do, you're going to see the LED for the starter come on. So again, that's into your starter solenoid plug. Okay, and most importantly, you're going to hear, well, you hear the relay clicking anyway, but as soon as I do, you'll see there, I've got a battery charger on, so that's why it's 14 volts. But yeah, so you can see we're happy that the fuel pump relay is turning on when it receives a start signal, which is A-OK. Right, so let's refer back to our little line up here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to feed the RPM signal to the engine. We're going to check the tacho. We're going to come back, check the injectors and coils, make sure they work. And what I'm probably going to do is when I plug in the RPM feed, we're going to see if that idle air control valve will just shoot up. So effectively all I'm doing is feeding an RPM signal from here. So what I'm going to do is turn this little device on, and then okay, I'm just going to hold it over there so you can see, and then we should see that little nozzle shoot out. Okay, anyway, right, so coming along here, hopefully you can see it, but there's that coil sparking over there. We've got that coil sparking over there. I'm going to keep the RPM quite low, which is probably why the idle control valve isn't actually coming out yet. But we've got now, starting over here, we've got injector 8. You can hear that clicking away. We're going to go over to injector 6. That's clicking away. We're going to go over to injector 4. Apologies, my light just died. We're going to go over to injector 2. Insert that in there. And you hear that clicking away. Then we're going to come over here to injector 7. Okay, and injector 5. That's fine. We're going to go over to injector 3. And we're going to go over to injector 1. Fantastic. Okay. I'm just going to try and increase the RPM. Oh, no, there you go. There you go. So you can see the nozzle's actually moved out. Obviously, when I kill the RPM, that will go back in again because they do reset. And so here we can see we've got our voltage here. Let me see if I can turn the light on. There you go. So we've got our voltage off of our fuel pump. So we're happy that as long as the engine ECU is receiving that crank sensor signal, it'll keep the fuel pump alive. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop. Oh, hang on. Before I do that, my apologies. So we've got a tacho signal there, but it's quite low. So let me just turn up the RPM signal here. And I'm going to keep an eye on the idle air control valve. Let's see if we can see it do its thing. Okay, so I've just cranked up the RPM. You can hear the coils are going a bit faster now. And you can see the RPM signal has risen over there. Okay, so just going to kill the RPM signal and then we'll go to the idle control valve. And there you go. So we're happy that that works all okay. We've obviously got everything else plugged in. We were checking for codes as we're unplugging everything from there. Right, so on to the last thing, and that is your trouble code. So they're quite easy to read on this one. It is all built into the fuse box. So again, let me just see if I can, nope. Right, okay. So in your fuse box, and according to the diagrams, I'll come and show you over here because this is nice and bright on the paperwork here. But basically, you've got your LED over there. So this is just a generic picture. So this is not your exact fuse box. There's your actual diagram of your fuse box. But you'll see here, we've just left a fuse open and you have that exact one. It's just over here. So it's 1, 2, 3, basically the fourth one down from this 5 amp fuse that's at the top here. Okay. And what we're going to basically do is we're just going to pull that fuse out and move it into the open slot. Okay. So that's going to then put the harness into ECU into diagnostic mode. So all we're going to do here, pull out this fuse. So I've got the fuse here now. I'm going to go over to this empty slot, which is the fourth one down from this one. I'm going to bridge that over there and you'll see the check engine light goes off. Then it'll start doing code. So you've got 1, 2, 3, or 2. So it's 12, 1, 2, 3. So it's 12 and 13. That's because cranking cam on synchronized because the device we use is not giving out a proper signal. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 15. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 15, sorry. And then we got 1, 2, 3, and then 1. Okay, so nice and easy to read. You're just basically grouping them into codes themselves. Okay, so effectively you're going to have 1 and 2 is 12, 1 and 3 is 13, and you've got 3 and 1 is 31. 2 and 2 is 22, etc. So there's no like single digit codes. You're always going to group them into pairs like that. But it's literally as simple as that. Everything is built into the fuse box for you, so you don't have to go and get anything funny to read it. You can literally read it on the side of the road. Obviously, we've got the 2 pages of diagnostic codes in the welcome pack there, so you can, if you want, laminate them, keep them in a glove box or whatever, and then you can read the codes whenever you want from there. Okay, and obviously we'll do that, and that'll then chop that off over there. So everything seems to be absolutely fine. We've got all the injectors firing as they should. We've got the crank and the cam signals coming through because obviously it feeds an RPM signal and she's happy with that. Both coils are firing, no problem at all. Obviously we're not getting codes for things that are plugged in like oxygen sensor, etc, etc. And one other thing about the diagnostic mode, I do have a video to show you, but when you do put it in the diagnostic mode and bridge that fuse over there, it does also lock the timing at 10 degrees. So be very careful to not leave the fuse in there. If you're going to read codes, read the codes, then remove. If you leave the fuse in there, you're going to lock the engine at 10 degrees and you're going to lose a lot of power. Now, the reason they do the locking at 10 degrees is so that you can check timing. So it's very difficult to see now because my torch went out, but on the plastic behind your crank pulley, you've got 0, 5, 10, 15 degrees. You've also got a marking on your crank pulley. So essentially in your case, obviously you've got a distributor with leads on. You come to spark plug 1, you put your timing light on there, plug it onto 1. You can start the engine with the diagnostic code in there. Just bearing in mind that this is the starter fuse, so you'll need to leave that one in and just get a paper clip or something to bridge that if you want to do that. start the engine up and you can check with the timing light, and you'll actually see you should be at 10 degrees. So if your cams have skipped a tooth or something like that, go ahead with the timing light and you'll see obviously that timing is not at 10 degrees and it's moved over a little bit. So it's just a nice easy way of checking without having to sort of remove all the covers. You just take the black cover off here, which is a few bolts, and then you can get your timing light on number 1, check it out on there, make sure you're happy with that. If it's out, then you can go start pulling the covers off, checking the timing marks, and there's loads of videos on how to check the timing marks there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that'll help you get it on the engine itself and get it seated in the car. Again, the wiring is very simple. It's just those few wires that you've got there. The main ones are the 2 powers, the fuel pump, ignition, start signal. That's all you need to run the engine. The other ones are all things like alternator light, oil light, etc. that you don't need, but obviously you're more than likely going to have them on your dash because there's safety features on there. And obviously I've been through the trouble codes and how to read those. So again, diagnostics should be quite easy for you. Once you've got the code, then you can investigate, what the actual issue is there. So next thing is we're going to get this in a box. We're going to get it over to you. And if anybody else has any questions about anything on here, please let us know. You can comment below or find us on Facebook at Phoenix Engine Management. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And what we'll do now is we'll show you the pictures of it all complete, actually laid out on the table so you can see what it looks like, not on an engine. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.